As the official team doctors for high school and college teams across Greater Omaha, MD West One Sports Med doctors can get you back into the game, stronger than ever. Meet the Sports Med team at mdwest1.com or call 402-390-4111.
It's time for another Prep Zone report. We are sponsored today by MD West One, Nebraska's most advanced sports medicine, orthopedics, neurosurgery, and spine care, covering Greater Omaha for over 70 years. I'm your host, Jake Anderson. Joining me today is Mike Patterson, who is prepared to split his time over the next week between Omaha and Lincoln at some great baseball venues.
Yeah, this is a good time when I could be cloned, Jake, when we have half the tournament in Lincoln and half the tournament in Omaha. But, we're going to do a great job of covering both Class A and Class B, no matter where it's at.
Definitely. Before we get into a state baseball preview, there was some not necessarily big news yesterday, but some news that people are interested in that we should talk about for a little bit. Shot clock could be coming to Nebraska high school basketball.
Yeah, I do call that pretty big news, Jake. Not that it's happening for sure, but, it seems like the past, 5 years, maybe a little more, there's kind of been a little more of a groundswell of support for it. The National Federation came out and just said, well, we're going to leave it up to each state to decide. So I see Iowa looks like they're going to be steaming forward with it. And Nebraska said possibly by 2022, 2023, maybe. So we shall see. Like we were talking earlier, a lot of it comes back to the schools wanting to add the expense of the shot clock and moreover finding reliable people to operate the shot clock for every home game they have. So that's definitely going to be an interesting thing to follow here in the months to come.
The way it would work, or at least the ruling from the NFSH or HS, would be a 35-second shot clock. Any proposal, though, must go through the NSAA legislative process. So it seems likelier now than it did 2 months ago. But as we've seen from some of those games, it's not necessarily that it would fix scoring. It would just create more of an urgency on offense and kind of eliminate those stalling tactics. We've both seen those games that, teams are 4 for 25 in a quarter. A shot clock isn't going to fix that, but it would, maybe help beef up the offense a little bit.
Right. And it depends on the teams, boys and girls. I mean, there are certain teams that 35 seconds, they're never going to take that long. And other ones, they're very comfortable with slowing the game down. I think 35 is kind of a nice number. It's not like a 24-second clock where you're kind of hustling just to get it over the half court line and set up your offense for a quick play. So I think 35 seconds is probably a reasonable amount. Like I said, a lot of coaches, I'm not sure if they're going to be too on board with it. A lot are, maybe some aren't, that have played that kind of slow down attack for a long time. They'll have to adjust. But again, interesting to see where this goes in the future.
Yeah, we'll have to watch for the latest on that. And I'm sure our colleague, Stu Pospisil, will have us covered on all the latest there. Moving on to Class A baseball, starts Saturday, and it's at 2 sites in Lincoln to open. There was a little bit of conflict with Haymarket, so you'll have 2 games at Den Hertog and 2 games at Sherman Field, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. The first one at Den Hertog, Millard South, number 1 seed against number 8 Columbus, and then the 4 seed Papillion La Vista South against the 5 seed Millard West at 2 p.m.
Right. Let's start with that first game, Jake. Millard South, they're top ranked. They deserve the top seed, 30-4. They've been one of the more consistent teams this year and really kind of topsy-turvy season. We've talked about the parity. We've talked about a lot of the great teams that didn't make it to state this year, but got very close. So getting back to the Patriots, they've waited 2 years for this state tournament after losing to Millard West 2-1 in 11 innings in 2019. And of course, we didn't have the season last year because of the pandemic. They'll be taking on kind of a dangerous Columbus team. They're really the unexpected one making it to state. Haven't been there since 1953. but played very well in districts. They defeated Omaha Creighton Prep, and then they defeated Lincoln East. So, the Discoverers definitely earned their way in. So I think you've got to give the Patriots the edge there. But boy, Columbus is definitely playing their best at the right time.
First trip since 1953. Was that the longest state tournament drought?
Well, when you dip down into Class B, you had Central City playing as a co-op this year, and as a co-op, they hadn't made it. But I don't think any schools are going to go back beyond 1953. And I guess we should mention, Jake, that Columbus wasn't playing baseball that whole time. They dropped it for a while. Nobody seems to know exactly when they dropped it, but they picked it back up in 1999. So they've been playing for 20 years and haven't gotten there. They've had teams at the American Legion state tournament in the summertime. So they've had some good players there in Columbus, but just haven't been to the state tournament in the spring. And of course, that's going to change on Saturday.
What about that 4-5 matchup? Edge to the Wildcats, your de facto defending champion?
That's kind of weird calling them the defending champions when so many of those guys from the 2019 team are gone. And, that's the way it was with all the teams this year, Jake. Just a lot of new faces. And Millard West is the same way, but we have to call them the defending champions. They're the number 5 seed. Have played very well for the most part this season. They went through a little bit of a stretch. Strangely, lost 3 games in their own tournament, which is, I can't remember that happening in forever. So, but they're still a very solid team. Playing Papio South, they've had a nice season too. Bill Lynham, the head coach, Papio South won a couple of titles, I think 2010, 2011. So, they've got some tradition there too. I believe Papio South won the only game they played. It was early in the season against Millard West. But boy, right here, I'm going to give a slight edge to the Wildcats as the quote unquote defending champs to win a tight one there in the first round.
And then at Sherman, those 2 games to open on Saturday, number 2 Bellevue West against number 7 Fremont Bergen at 10 a.m. And then the 2 p.m. game that follows, number 3 Lincoln East against number 6 Lincoln Southwest, the all Lincoln battle.
Right. Let's start with the Thunderbirds, the number 2 seed, along with Millard South. Those 2 teams have probably been the most consistent all season long. 27-4 for Bellevue West. They won the Metro Conference tournament in midseason, won their district on their home field, so definitely earned their way in. Fremont Bergen has had a nice season too. I had them ranked as high as number 2 early in the season. They were defeated in districts, so they are one of the 2 wild cards. But having said that, the Knights have a nice team too. Their top pitcher, Carter Sintek, defeated Millard South earlier this year, gave them one of their few losses. So dangerous first rounder there for Bellevue West, but I think you got to give the slight edge to the Thunderbirds there as the number 2 seed.
And then that 3-6, the all Lincoln battle. What's to watch for there?
Yes, the Heartland Athletic Conference battle. They're 2 teams that know each other well. They split 2 games earlier in the season. The Spartans, Lincoln East, are the number 3 seed. They've had a little bit of the better of it this season. Michael Lanick, their head coach, former prep assistant, has done a nice job. Having said that, Columbus upset Lincoln East in that district final, so the Spartans will go to state as the other wild card. Southwest, they're pretty much a regular at state. Another consistent season, 19-10. I know that might not sound tremendous, but that's just kind of the season it was, Jake. There was just a whole lot of parity, and 10 losses was really no shame in that. This year, Southwest played well, and they ended up winning that Fremont Bergen district. So Southwest playing well, but slight edge to the Spartans, the number 3 seed in that first round.
All right. So this is where we remind people that state baseball is that nice, wonderful double elimination tournament bracket that it can get wonky by about day 3. But your 4 teams that you have starting at undefeated or with a win and giving them that early edge, because you want to stay without a loss as long as possible. Millard South, Patriots coming in on a 14-game winning streak. They won the district title. Millard West, Bellevue West, Lincoln East. Is it as simple as Millard South is number one in your rankings? If Millard South wins that day one, that's the edge for them. They can, pencil them all the way through the bracket, or
for sure, no, Jake. Like I said, these teams are all really close, and a lot of teams that didn't make it are really close. So, but it is really important to win that first day to try to stay out of that losers bracket in the double elimination tournament as long as possible. Under the older format, boy, once you dropped into that losers bracket, it was almost impossible to battle your way back out. They've followed the NSAA has followed the American Legion pattern, so it's not impossible to get back out of that losers bracket. But like I said, you want to stay out of there as long as possible. So just because Millard South, even if they win that first one against Columbus, I'm not ready to crown them as champions by a long shot, because they would, if they'd win that first round, then they'd play either Millard West or Papio South, and that is going to be a real battle. And if they would win that, then they'd be playing perhaps Bellevue West or whichever team is still undefeated on that other part of the bracket. So very important to win in the first round, but not impossible to come back through the losers bracket. But we'll see what happens on that first day.
Definitely. And the rest of the games after Saturday will be at Haymarket Park Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. All this assuming, as well as Nebraska is known for, we avoid those May thunderstorms that always seem to pop up during state baseball.
Right. It's kind of a given. And those happen with state track. And since we have state track going on next week, we kind of have a double whammy going on with the baseball and track. And of course, soccer will still be going on. But boy, busy time for the state tournaments. That's for sure.
So all those teams at the top are pretty evenly balanced. Who's the lower seed, your sleeper team that could run through? And if they're in that championship Thursday, and if they win that championship Thursday, it wouldn't be a surprise.
Well, I'll define lower seed, Jake, as anything below the top four. So then I'm going to gravitate right to Millard West, the number 5 seed. Very deep,
giving you the cop out.
Very deep team. They have the pitching staff. You need the pitching staff, obviously, to survive this tournament, and especially with the pitching counts that have been brought into play in the last few years. So if you don't have that deep pitching staff, you're really in trouble. I don't think Bergen or Columbus, to be honest, I don't know if they have the depth to get there. I guess if I wanted to pick another team that's not in the top 4, perhaps Lincoln Southwest. They've had some nice efforts. They always have a good competitive team. Have never won a state title. It's kind of like Millard West a couple years ago. I think that's going to happen someday. But I'd say maybe number 5 or number 6 seeds there, Millard West or Lincoln Southwest, maybe the best chance of one of the non-top 4 seeds to make a run.
And then in Class B, it's at Werner Park this year, which means Saturday we have a full day of action there, 10 a.m., and then the last game 7 p.m., assuming they all start on time. Let's start with that 10 a.m. game, number 1 Hastings against number 8 Beatrice.
Right. Hastings emerged as the number 1 team in our ratings probably about the last month or so. I don't think they play quite the schedule that some of the other teams do that we're going to talk about, but the Tigers have had a nice season. They've had some nice Legion teams. I think they finished as the runner-up in Class B in 2019 to Bennington. So most of those players have graduated, but Hastings, number 1 seed, and number 1 in our rankings, 20-5, and I think they deserve that top seed. And Beatrice, the number 8 seed, they kind of struggled down the stretch, Jake. They're coming in as one of the wild cards, so they're 14-6. I think it'd be a surprise if Beatrice can pull that upset in the first round. Not to say it's impossible, but definitely the edge to Hastings in that first round game.
And then the number 4, number 5 matchup at 1 p.m. Elkhorn, the 4 seed, and Ralston, the 5 seed.
Yeah, that's two good teams to talk about, Jake. Elkhorn, we've talked about Drew Christo, the Nebraska recruit, leading the pitching staff. They had another pitcher, Chase Smith, throw a perfect game the last game of the regular season. So Malachi Vitak, another really good pitcher for Elkhorn. Talk about pitching depth. They have it. He's a Creighton recruit, so they can throw any one of those three guys at you. And the Antlers, very well-balanced team. I really look for them to be one of the favorites in this Class B tournament. And Ralston, a team that hasn't been to state in a while. I think it's been 10 years. Coach Tom Cooper's done a nice job with the Rams. They finished off and won their district, so they're 20-7. So they've had a nice season, but I'm going to give the edge to the Elkhorn Antlers. Not sure who they're going to pitch that first game, but of the three guys that I mentioned, I think they could throw any one of those three. Josh Kilser is a really good pitcher for Ralston, so if he can come up big, maybe the Rams can steal that first one. But I've got to give a slight edge to the Antlers there.
That pitching matchup leads to one of my questions for you. Elkhorn, Drew Christo, as you said, great pitcher for them. He's also pretty good behind the plate. What do you think that balance is that they're going to find between wanting him to pitch because he's one of their best pitchers, but also relying on that depth and getting him behind the plate?
Right. Yeah, like you said, also a good hitter. So, it's not unusual in the high school ranks for the pitcher to hit for himself. So Drew pretty much does that. So I don't think it's really going to affect anything, Jake, that he's, either going to be pitching or playing in the field someplace. But, very outstanding athlete, led Elkhorn to the Class B football title. And, he's just one of those great athletes. And it's going to be interesting to see what his future holds. I know there have been a lot of professional scouts at Elkhorn games with their radar guns on Drew. So he's a Nebraska recruit, but we'll see what happens in his future. But before any of that happens, I'm sure he'd be the first to say, I want to finish my Elkhorn career with a state title.
Definitely. Then that 3-6 matchup, number 3, Omaha Skutt, the Skyhawks, feel like they're always seated high in any tournament that we talk about. They'll face the number 6 Central City Fullerton Centura, one of those nice co-ops.
Right. Yeah, to be honest, Central City, the number 6 seed, our knowledge of them is kind of limited to, just what we see on the stat sheet, but they definitely earned their way here. They're 19-5. We know a lot more about Skutt, obviously here closer to home. They won a title a couple years ago. 17-6. The Skyhawks defeated Bennington in their district final. So I think they're going in on a pretty nice roll. Cade Barton is their top pitcher. I expect him to be, if not pitching that first game, they would have a tough, if they pass that first test, they've got a tough semifinal ahead. So it's kind of interesting to think about that, Jake, as far as the coaches. They want to have their best pitcher and the best matchups, but you also got to worry about wanting your pitcher back as soon as possible with pitch counts. So I've seen some of the top pitchers leave games early in the state tournament because coaches are thinking ahead that hopefully they can hang on and then they're going to have that pitcher back maybe a little sooner than expected. But having said that, 3 and 6 seeds, Scott, against Central City, let's give the edge there to the Skyhawks.
And then the last game of the day there, set for 7 p.m., number 2 Norris against number 7 Bennington. And again, de facto state champion, defending champion there. Are we giving the edge to the number 7 seed?
I can't do it, Jake. The Badgers are the defending champions from 2019. They've had a good season. They lost in the Skutt district, so they're the other wild card team this year. Along with Beatrice we talked about. So Bennington has had a nice season. I remember talking to their coach before the season began as the defending champs, and he didn't really know what to expect. So many young players on the team. Most of these guys were junior varsity last year. So, but I think Bennington has done a nice job of getting to state. Having said that, Norris, you mentioned a school that seems to be there every year. Norris is like that in Class B. The Titans are just a regular number 2 seed, 22-7. they just crushed their competition the last 5 games of the regular season. That included 2 really lopsided wins in districts. So they're entering state on a roll. And, the Titans, like we said, are there every year. I've got to give the edge to Norris in that game against Bennington.
That would set up one heck of a Monday at Werner Park. Those elimination games would be feisty. And then the winners bracket games, Hastings, Elkhorn, Omaha, Scott, Norris. Yeah, you'd have a hard time giving an edge to anybody that day.
Right. That would be 2 great semifinals if that's what it is. But, hey, we don't know what's going to happen on Saturday yet. But, I'm sure this question's coming up soon, Jake. But when I look at those 8 teams, man, I'm thinking of Hastings. I'm thinking of Norris. I'm thinking of Scott. But I'm going to give a slight edge to those Elkhorn Antlers. Like I said, they've got a deep pitching staff, and you really need that in a double elimination tournament. And I know they're the number 4 seed, but if they can pass that first test against Ralston and Kilser probably pitching against them, they could maybe beat Hastings in that semi, and then that could set up a great maybe Elkhorn-Norris game on Tuesday. Who knows? I'm getting ahead of myself there, but I'm going to give a slight edge to the Antlers to come away with this Class B title, Jake.
I had a feeling that that's where you were going to go. You read my mind. I'm really looking forward to this one because it seems like a wide open bracket. I mean, we say that every year, but when the 4 seed is maybe the strongest team in the tournament, it speaks to the depth of the teams and how good they look. I'm looking forward to hoping the rain stays away and that we get a nice 5 days of games at Werner Park and 5 days of good games down there in Lincoln.
Right. You know what makes baseball interesting, Jake? It makes it really tough to rate. Unlike basketball, where you've got the same starting 5 every game, makes a big difference who's on that bump, the starting pitcher for each of these games, each of these matchups. I've seen state tournaments where one team has had just a real ace pitcher. Nobody wanted to face him, and he was enough to pull out a first-round win for that team. So I think, having said what we did about who we think might win these state tournaments, a lot of unpredictability. So we'll see how that first day goes. That's when a lot of the best pitchers pitch, and go from there. But I think it's going to be a fun state tournament. Like you said, hopefully the rains hold off for us.
What's your plan for Saturday? Are you going to be Omaha or Lincoln?
Well, it's changed about 3 or 4 times, Jake, because there's been some complications trying to cover the state soccer that we are, and with track coming up next week, and Class A being at 2 sites, that's kind of a complication too. I think the NSAA did that this year a little bit with COVID in mind, trying to spread things out, because usually all 4 of those games are at the same site, like they are Class B this year. So having said that, I think the most recent plan, and this is, of course, possibly going to change between now and Saturday, but I think I'm covering the first 2 games at Den Hartog on Saturday in Class A, which would be Millard South Columbus, Papio South Millard West. Then I'm going to zip up to Werner Park and cover probably that last Class B game. We'll have somebody else there at Werner earlier on. And so, like I said, it's a time when I really need to be cloned. Unable to figure that cloning process out. I'm going to be in Lincoln covering a couple games, and back in Omaha, or more accurately, Papillion at Werner Park, covering at least 1 game of the Class B tournament.
Well, you'll be doing enough work this week that I think people just assume that you'll have multiple clones floating around out there. But people can find
not just 1, but several.
People can find your coverage, M. Patterson OWH, on Twitter. And we'll have coverage of the entire state baseball tournament, as well as you alluded to, state soccer, track and field, golf, tennis, everything. Anyprepzone.com. We'll have live updates rolling. Until next time, thanks for listening.